All right, let's dive right in. Today we are tackling a massive question. How do we bring the incredible power of AI into the super-regulated, high-stakes world of drug development and do it safely? You've got this immense promise on one hand and this immense responsibility on the other.
I mean, we can all see it, right? AI has the potential to totally change how we develop medicines, making research faster and helping patients. But let's be real. In a field where patient safety is absolutely everything, you can't just plug in a new piece of tech and hope for the best. We need a solid rulebook.
And guess what? We finally have one. Regulators like the FDA and the European Medicines Agency have actually stepped in and published a clear set of guiding principles. Now, this isn't about slowing things down, not at all. It's about building a safe road for all this innovation to travel on. So let's break down what this new rulebook is all about. So here's our game plan. First, we'll touch on why these rules are so necessary. Then, we'll walk through the 10 principles one by one. After that, and this is the fun part, we'll apply them to a huge decision people are making right now. Should you use a private, local LLM or a big public AI service? We'll do a deep dive on the biggest risks and then wrap up with a practical, hybrid strategy that you can actually use.
Okay, so let's start with the big why. At their core, these principles create a framework. They're here to make sure that as we get creative with AI, we don't forget the super strict standards for quality and safety that the whole industry, and more importantly, patients really depend on. It's all about building trust in this tech right from the start.
All right, now for the main event, the 10 principles themselves. Honestly, you should think of these as the ultimate regulatory checklist for anyone wanting to use AI in clinical development. They cover the whole shebang, from the big picture strategic ideas down to the really nitty-gritty technical details. The first 5 really set the stage. Number 1, human-centric by design, just means AI has to serve people, not the other way around. 2, the risk-based approach is absolutely crucial. You don't treat a simple task with the same level of scrutiny as a critical one. Then you've got adherence to existing standards like GXP, which you probably know stands for Good Practice Quality Guidelines, having a super clear purpose for the AI, and of course, having a team with all kinds of different experts.
Now, the next 5 principles get a lot more hands-on. This is where we get into the technical nuts and bolts. We're talking about meticulous data governance, solid model design, checking performance based on risk, managing the model's entire life from start to finish, and finally, making sure everyone involved gets clear, understandable information.
Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting. How do these principles actually help us make decisions in the real world? Well, one of the biggest questions that organizations are wrestling with right now is whether they should build their own private local large language model or just use a powerful public one from, say, OpenAI or Google. So let's just ask the question directly. When you're handling incredibly sensitive clinical trial data, which path is actually more compliant? Which one is safer? You'll see that these principles give us a perfect lens to analyze that choice. And this table just lays out the trade-offs perfectly. You look at data governance or GXP standards, a local LLM gives you total control, which is a massive pro. But with a public AI, you can get these unannounced updates that completely break your validated system, a huge con for regulatory work. Then again, public AI gives you instant access to the best performance out there, while building a local LLM, well, that takes a ton of in-house expertise. So let's dig a little deeper into those high-risk areas. You know, the places where this choice really matters for safety and compliance. We're going to focus on the principles that create the biggest separation between these two approaches. First up, data governance. It's pretty simple, actually. With a local LLM, your sensitive patient data never, ever leaves your secure environment. This makes it way easier to prove where the data has been and to maintain control, which, as you know, is a cornerstone of GXP. The moment you send that data to an external public service, traceability becomes a gigantic headache.
And the guidelines couldn't be clearer on this. The process has to be, and I'm quoting here, detailed, traceable, and verifiable. That right there is the standard you have to meet. Trying to verify every single step when your data is in some external system? Good luck. It's a huge compliance risk.
All right, next up is validation. For any kind of regulatory submission, you need what's called a validated state. Think of it as a frozen, stable system that you've tested inside and out. A local LLM gives you that control. Now, the problem with public models is they're always changing. The provider could push an update overnight that makes all of your careful testing and performance assessments completely worthless. And this brings us to a really critical concept, data drift. Basically, this is what happens when the new real-world data a model sees starts to look different from its training data. When that happens, its performance starts to go downhill,
And in a long study, that's a massive concern.
This is exactly why Principle 9, lifecycle management, is so important. With the local LLM, you're in the driver's seat. You can lock the model version and set up a schedule to recheck it for drift. You have total control. But with a public service, the model could literally change from one day to the next without you even knowing, making it almost impossible to guarantee it's performing consistently throughout a multi-year trial.
So with all these risks, what's the answer? Well, it's not about choosing one and ditching the other. The guidelines actually point to a much smarter, risk-based hybrid strategy that lets you use the best of both worlds.
It's a simple two-step approach. Step 1. For your high-risk, GXP-regulated stuff, we're talking things that directly touch study data, like medical coding or generating datasets, you use a controlled, validated local LLM. That way, you ensure privacy and you have a clear audit trail. Step 2. For the lower-risk tasks, like maybe doing a literature review or summarizing internal documents, you can totally leverage the power of a public AI. You just have to make sure those enterprise-level privacy settings are turned on.
So at the end of the day, here's the key takeaway. Being compliant isn't about picking one tool over another. It's about actually using that risk-based approach we keep talking about. It's about understanding the task, understanding the risk, and then matching the right tool to the right job.
And that really leaves us with one final thought. As this technology gets woven more and more into everything we do, the real challenge is going to be finding that balance between incredible innovation on one side and the strict demands of regulatory compliance on the other. So the question for you is, how will your organization navigate this new world?